Hey guys, it's Kevin, my review for Borat's subsequent movie film. So what Borat's subsequent movie film is essentially about is, of course, we pick up after about 20 years after the events of the previous film, and Borat has been imprisoned because of the way that film turned out. It's really brought shame to Kazakhstan and his entire country. So he's been in prison for quite a few years now, but he's finally being released, and basically he decides that when he's going to do that, he realizes that his entire life has pretty much been stolen, his family and everything, and all he has left is a 15-year-old daughter that he did not know existed, and so now he has to try to figure out what exactly he wants to do about it, if he wants to take care of her, or what he's going to do overall. So Borat's subsequent movie film, I was very excited for this sequel. I mean, I don't think most people disagree with me, but I think Borat as a film is one of the funniest comedies really ever. I think that it is an incredibly hilarious film, but I also think it's a really great satire of American politics and just really exposing a lot of the, just a lot of the idiots and the assholes of politics and things like that. And I think Borat did a really good job with that at the time. I think it's only gotten better as time has gone on because of just how little it cares about trying to pander to people, how it really just goes all out in that way. And so asking any film to follow up something like Borat, I mean, again, it's very hard to do that. It's very hard to expect this film to live up to that. I did not go into this thinking it was going to in general, so I really was just hoping that this could be a really solid sequel. This is something that Sacha Baron Cohen said he really was never going to do, but he shot the entire film in secret. It's come out. I finally watched it. I had the intention of watching it before the election. I just never really got to it, but I finally did watch it, and I have to say, in terms of comedy sequels, Borat's subsequent movie film is definitely one of the better ones. This is a really funny sequel that also I think does a really good job of staying as its own thing and setting apart from the first film, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but we're just getting to it right now. I mean, when it comes to this film, there really are only two actors here. There's other actors for sure, but it really is just the two actors that are in this film. And, I mean, what else can we really say, especially about Sacha Baron Cohen? He is just so multifaceted, he's so versatile, he's so utterly transformative as these characters, and that's why he's so good in these roles, right? He's able to really convince you that he is Borat, but he has a lot more that he has to do in this film, because the Borat character, because the fact that he's been in prison and people know who he is now, he has to don, a lot more disguises, and Cohen just pulls it all off effortlessly. I loved what he ended up doing with this character. I thought that he was just so relentlessly funny, and you can tell, he really hasn't missed a beat in terms of this character. You would think after a few years maybe it's not really working anymore, but it very much is still working, and I loved what he ended up doing here overall. I think he gives such a hilarious performance, and I think it definitely is on par with the first movie. I think there's a little bit more that Borat has to do in this film in terms of his acting, and I thought Cohen just did a really great job with that, and again, it's just really showing why he is so good at this character. If you forgot, because it has been a while, since the first Borat, why he was so good, this film will very quickly remind you just how good he is in that role, and I love what he ended up doing here. However, easily for me, the big standout of this entire movie is actually Maria Bakalova, who plays his 15-year-old daughter, Tutar, and I thought she was just amazing in this role. Not only do I think that she really, she really did blend well with Sacha Baron Cohen, which is very hard to do. Cohen is someone who is just so outrageous, and he just, every single joke, he just hits it so hard, and it's really hard to be on that level. I think there are points in this movie where she very well surpasses it. I mean, Tutar is just someone that is so crazy as a character because she's been locked up. There's a lot of things from, Kazakhstan that she doesn't really understand in terms of her culture and things like that. There's a lot of the movie where we are just kind of seeing things through her, and I thought she was just hilarious in this film. She has easily the funniest scenes in the entire movie. I loved what she ended up doing. I thought that Tutar as a character actually went through a pretty good transformation, and I liked what they ended up doing with her. And again, I just thought that she was the big highlight of this entire film for me. I don't think this film would be as good if she wasn't in it. I really don't. And I don't know too much about her. I know that she is a actress that's like been in a lot more dramatic work, but she really does kill it in this film, and I hope moving forward she's able to do more stuff like this. I really do think we're going to start seeing more of her. You know, again, I know she's done stuff in, like, Bulgaria and whatnot, but I do think this is going to be a huge breakthrough role for her, and I really do hope that we start to see more performances from her in the future, because I just absolutely love what she ended up doing here. These two complement each other so nicely in terms of their performances. They just have such great chemistry throughout the film. The back and forth between them is some of the funniest stuff, and I just really loved what they end up doing. Again, it's very hard to find someone to be on Cohen's level, but not only is Bakalova on Cohen's level, I think at points she is funnier than Cohen was, and I just really loved what she ended up doing here overall. But now we gotta get to the directing and the writing, which, believe it or not, this film is not directed by Sacha Baron Cohen. It is, of course, directed by Jason Wollner, who I think did a really good job in constructing this film. You know, the film is still very blunt when it comes to its politics. It still very much doesn't shy away from being very raunchy and just really being as not PC as it possibly can, and that's something I really did appreciate about the directing. But the film also surprisingly has a lot more heart to it than I was expecting, and I think that's something that Wollner did a really good job with. You know, he recognizes what the first one really is, in that it is telling a story that wasn't really seen in 2006, and I think that's why that film stuck out so much, because it was so, like, ahead of its time in that way. And, you know, Larry Charles did such a great job directing that film and all of Cohen's other films, so to see him not direct this one, it's a little weird, but I think Wollner did a really good job in recapturing the magic that worked with the first one, but again, also adding something that wasn't really there in the first one. I thought overall his directing was just very impressive here. It's hard to you know, especially coming in as a new director, to try to figure out how to direct this, and I think Wollner did it as good as he possibly could. I was very impressed by his directing here, but the screenplay to this film also is so good. I mean, what Cohen came up with, and I know he's only one of like 6 writers, but what he was able to come up with in this film, I think is fantastic, because he really doesn't have a lot to, you know, that he needs to do in terms of the story. You know, America itself right now is kind of a joke, and Cohen very much does recognize that we're going through a really rough time with COVID and, you know, the Trump administration and whatnot. Like, these are things he dives into, but he doesn't really need to do a lot. He can just talk to these people and really just expose just how brainwashed, but also just how careless they've become, how they are someone that have these just ridiculous theories. There's like a scene where he's talking to like these like 3, like, I want to say they're lumberjacks, but I don't know if they're lumberjacks. They certainly look like they were. They look like they could be like in an episode of Duck Dynasty or something. I'm not really sure if they were, but that's what they looked like. And, you know, he's talking to them, and just the things that they say about, they go on this whole like diatribe basically about Democrats and things like that, and it's just insane to listen to. And I think again, that's one of the things that was so good about the first Borat, is the way that he was able to really expose just, again, the corruptness of America, and he does that very well here. You know, seeing just how careless people have become, seeing how little people, you know, seeing how little people seem to give a shit about certain things, I just think is really well done, and I thought he did a really good job with the satire element of it all, because that's something that people do forget, is that they like to highlight, oh, the raunchiness and, like, the naked fight of the first Borat, but it really was a satire on the state of America today, and I don't think there's ever a better time to do that than right now, and so I think that's something that he did a really good job with. But the other thing that really impressed me is that this film actually does have a little bit more of a story to it than I was expecting. This very much is a father and daughter type story. You know, Borat is in a place where this girl shows up seemingly out of nowhere, and he really doesn't know how to take care of her. He kind of recognizes that in the film, and so he kind of just, he keeps trying to send her away. He keeps trying to do everything he can to get rid of her every second, and you can see that throughout the film, though, he does start to generally care for her. And I thought that was a really good arc for Borat as a character. You know, in the first one, we saw him and, you know, he had a specific mission. But in this one, he really is focused on the relationship he has with his daughter and what he really wants to do about it. And I thought that was just some of the best stuff in the movie. And again, yes, a lot of it is played for laughs, but some of it is done in a generally, you know, heartfelt manner. And that's something I wasn't really expecting, and I think the film does a really good job with that overall, but also critiquing the politics of Kazakhstan. There's a lot that Borat has been told that just is not conducive to modern America, and Tutar very much does realize that, and so she kind of goes off on her own and tries to become like her own woman, and that was some of my favorite parts of the movie, is that, again, there is a good portion of this movie that Borat is not in. The focus is still very much on Borat, but Tutar has just as much screen time as him, and I think that's why Tutar was just such a great new character for me, because you really do get to see the juxtaposition of these two characters. They're very different, and I really did like seeing that. And again, she has so many hilarious lines throughout this movie. There's this conference especially that she goes to, and just what she ends up talking about just had me absolutely roaring with laughter. I could not believe the shit that she was saying, and you just think about how a lot of this is done in front of regular people. It's not actors, and that adds to the hilariousness of it all. I'm not one that usually loves hidden camera comedies, but Cohen is just able to do it better than most, and I think that's represented best in like a scene like what I just talked about with that conference, and I think they just did such an incredible job with that. So yeah, I think the screenplay here is still very consistent. I think there's a lot of stuff that works very well. Again, it really does get into the politics of America, especially a certain scene that everyone's talked about involving Giuliani, which, getting into that scene, I will say, going into this movie, I wasn't really happy that that was being leaked so early, and especially after seeing the movie, I'm even more annoyed about it now, because it's one of those things where, like, I get it, it's something that should be known, it's something that we should very much talk about because of what Giuliani really does. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting, but the whole film really is building up to, like, that confrontation, so the fact that that's kind of was well known before the movie came out is just a little bit disappointing. I would have liked to see that scene without knowing what was going to happen, but it's still just as funny. It's still just as effective. There's a lot of just hilarious moments in this movie, and I just think the screenplay overall is just really great. And again, the way that they set up the Borat character and like what he's gone through since the first movie, it really just feels like no time has passed. And I think even though there is a passage of time, like, it feels like no time has passed in terms of you know, how good the screenplay is, and I think they did a really good job with that. The cinematography in this film is still really good. It's very well crafted in that way, and I think they did a really good job with that for sure. And again, considering that they had a very small crew, this film did not have, like, that much of a crew at all. It was really just a few people that he had on set. It doesn't show. You know, the film does not feel significantly cheaper than the first one, and I think they did a really good job in terms of the cinematography here. The score here is still really good too, and the editing in this film, it's very well paced. This film goes by very quickly. It's a film that I think you'll very easily get sucked into, and I really just enjoyed the way this film was edited. I think the pacing was pretty much perfect in that way. I will say, though, as good as this film is, it definitely is not as good as the first one. There are a couple things that do bring it down to match that quality, and one of them being is that, though I enjoy a lot of the scenes involving the, you know, regular people, there are times in this film where it very much feels like these are not regular people and they are actors, and Cohen specifically got them to say things that were just a little too coincidental to what he was going through in his current situation. And again, I understand why he needed to do that, but it just felt a little too convenient. You know, Borat was one of those things where everyone was pretty much unknown, and I understand that Sacha Baron Cohen and the Borat character is a lot more well known now, so because of that, like, he has to don disguises and he has to, like, you know, go undercover and play all these different roles, and so I get that. But I do wish that they still could have had mostly real people throughout. They do, but there are moments where it's clearly paid actors that are doing this, and it just isn't as, I think some of the fun is kind of lost there. It's still fun to watch, but I think some of the fun is the fact that these are real people, and they're in these crazy situations, and they're doing these ridiculous things, and I would have liked to see just a little bit more of them, so I think that kind of brings some things down. Also, I do think there are some points of this movie that skips over some things that I would have wanted to see, specifically in the first, 10 to 15 minutes of the film. I think some things were just a little bit rushed overall. But other than that, there really isn't too much to complain about when it comes to this sequel. I think as comedy sequels go, this is definitely one of the better ones. It has the, again, just very brutal and honest satire that was in the first film. It also does a good job, I think, of taking the Borat character in a new direction. It has a surprising amount of heart that I wasn't really expecting, a really good father-daughter story, and a great performance from Maria Bakalova, who, like I said, I think she's going to be an absolute star after this film for sure. And again, it's a film where I think, asking any film to follow up Borat, this film was never going to top for sure. There was just no possible way that was going to happen, but there are moments where it does come pretty close to recapturing the original, and I think this film is going to age just as well as that original film. I think there's a lot of things it does very well. I think it exposes the politics of America very well. I think it'll open you up to new perspectives that you didn't see before, and just see the outrageousness of some of these people and the things that they're saying, and I think it overall just does a really good job of that. Borat Subsequent Movie Film is a film that I had a really great time with. I thought this was a very well done sequel, and I'm definitely going to give Borat Subsequent Movie Film overall a B+. Alright guys, in my review of Borat Subsequent Movie Film, let me know what you guys saw of this movie. I'll lift your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.